Yo, folks, welcome to the pre-show. As I make sure everything's set up, and I do believe it is. So, I did this all earlier. Just made sure everything was all set. Went off and did other things. And here we are. So, how's everybody tonight? Welcome to the program. That's not really the program yet. It's the pre-program. The program before the program. I'm the warm-up band for me. So we've got about 3 minutes. 3 minutes after the hour, we go live on the radio station over at Subspace Radio. And there we go. We're set. I've got all my buttons done. My soundboard is up. Look, I found my plaque. I got to put this up in my office. This is that plaque. I got this a while back. It's the USS Enterprise Galaxy class starship. I can say starship. That's going to go on my wall pretty soon here. So it's a Galaxy class. It's the NCC 1701D. So this is from the next generation. When I bought it, I thought it was actually for the original Enterprise, but it's not. So you should know that by the insignia with the oval behind it. That is not original Star Trek. That is follow-up Star Trek. Hello, Matt Finn. Good to see you, brother. Glad that you are here. We have got a minute and 4 seconds left before we go live on air. And then we'll take it from there. Good to see you all. I'm glad you're coming in. Tomorrow's election day. Everybody ready for that? Everybody going to go take time to cast your vote? Because you can do, as citizens of this country, what a lot of people around the world are not allowed to do. I'll save that for the show. I'll save it. So, Michelle Canham Free. Good to see you. Grumpy Stack. Good to see you. Sarah Youssef. Good to see you. So we're just about ready to row. We got about a half a minute left. Chad Senders. Good to see you, brother. Glad you made it in. Glad you are here. How's things going, Matt Finn? It seems I haven't talked to you in a while, other than seeing you scantily. Not scantily, but scantily in the... Oh, we got 7 seconds. We're going dark. Stand.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
Happy Monday evening, folks. Welcome to the program. I'm sure glad that you're here. I'm Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio program right here on the Subspace Radio Network. And you can find them at subspace.radio. Radio. And go check them out. Look at the lineup that we're building up so far. I think you'll enjoy what you see there. A lot of good talk, a lot of good people. And so welcome to my program tonight, which you can also catch in its video simulcast over on YouTube. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join the chat room, which is already going on right now. And I see people like Matt Finn, Master Finn, my master and commander, over in the chat room. And Rameldian is there. And Steve Clark and Sarah Yusuf. And who else we got? I know we have Michelle Canham Free, Grumpy Stack, Chad Sanders, and there's a few more. I hope I haven't missed you. Oh, Uncle Dave Potter is there, and the numbers keep climbing. So Barbie D is there. She just walked into the room. So welcome everybody over in the chat room. Welcome everybody over on the radio. If you are wanting to see this on Facebook, you can do that as well. The chats work there, but they don't always show up into the main chat room, which is running off of the YouTube. So if you want to join for the real chat flavor and joining the Intrepid family, just go on over to the YouTube page, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And let's see, you can find it over on my Facebook page, Subspace Radio's Facebook page, and Intrepid Radio's Facebook page. There you go. So let's move into it. You know what tonight is? Tonight is Election Day Eve. Now, you'd think I'd have a big thing all planned up for tonight to really try to get you thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow when you vote, especially if you're an American citizen. What I will do first off is tell you, if you are a United States citizen and you're not planning on voting, I don't want to hear any belly aching from you about what happens. Not to come off on a negative like that, but if you don't vote, then don't express your opinion about who's in office or what's going on. Because yes, the vote does matter, whether you think it does or not. That's a hyper cynicism that says, oh, it doesn't matter if I vote anyway. Yeah, it does matter if you vote. There is a populist vote, yes, but there's an electoral vote for the national elections. This is local elections. This is voting for your senators and your congresspeople, your governors that are out there. And then, of course, all the other smaller offices down below them. And so get out there and either vote to maintain the status quo in our country. If you like the way things are going right now, you go, oh, just give them a chance. Go ahead and vote for mostly the current party that's sitting in there. Vote to save their power block. Vote to save their decision-making processes. Vote to maintain their majorities. If you like what's going on, if you're better off now than you were 2 years ago, then go ahead and vote where you're better off. And vote what's better for the country the way you see it. Now, however, if you are on the other side of that coin and you say, our leadership is in dire straits in this country, we cannot maintain the current course we're on. We need to change all the checks and balances around the leadership in our country by voting in local leaders and state leaders that are going to, what we believe is going to make a change. Then vote that way tomorrow. But do not vote, to use a double negative. Vote your conscience. And I'm not going to do anybody any preaching tonight because I have kind of maintained a thing. Yeah, here's Leslie Hoker's. Here's Leslie Hoker. If you're happy with the crap running this country on both the local, state, and federal level, you're not paying attention to the destruction. Well, that's it. If you're not paying attention to what's going on, you're probably going to vote for the status quo. So what about the full moon, says Chad Sanders. I didn't consult the moon or what phase we're in for tomorrow. I have no idea. What is it, supposed to be a full moon tomorrow? So what did Professor Bauer say? Because Leslie said, from your lips to God's ears. He said, blood red moon and eclipse and red wave tomorrow. Coincidence? Oh, that's right. I remember you talking about that before, Professor Bauer. So, yes, it could be a very interesting day. I have my opinions. which I'll keep to myself. Right. You all know where I stand on tomorrow's elections. I don't want to be one of those people, though, that's just out there pounding. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I wish I could tell you how to vote, but it needs to be from your knowledge and your conscience. If you vote for the current status quo to be maintained, you're not looking and you're not paying attention. You're not educating yourself. I know of people that are going to vote for the powers that exist right now and to maintain the status quo simply because they want the seats in Congress to be kept on that side of the aisle for whenever they can make a change. Maybe the Democratic Party, maybe it's a secret in the Democratic Party. I don't know what it is. Maybe the plan is after these midterms, if they win the midterms, they're going to get rid of old Joe and finally retire him via the constitutional 25th Amendment for his limited capacity to lead. And those who still think he's leading right now, I know I got to shake my head because I know some very, very good people, very smart people who support Biden and support that regime being in office. And I'm like, I don't know. How can you do that? It's because they would rather have him in there in the condition he's in, knowing fully well the condition he's in, than to have the other political ideology in its place. And so they're riding it out. And that's really all many of them are doing. So if you see anything going on tomorrow in the elections that smacks of trying to keep the status quo, you've got one of two things: either really stupid people out there who don't know how to think, who cannot connect the dots and cannot put things together as to what's right or wrong for this country, or you've got people that are willing to ride out the terror of it all until they can get somebody better in the executive office. And but it's really not all the executive office either. The executive office can't work without a good legislature. And that legislature is meant to be a check and a balance against the executive, and vice versa. Congress, when you say Congress doesn't get anything done, oh, they move so slow. Well, you know what? Congress was devised, it was created by the founders to move miserably slow. Unless, of course, there's crises and there's crises votes and things like that, and things that absolutely must be done that fall under the purview of the federal government. But Congress grinds slow because Congress was designed to grind slow. Congress was designed so there has to be fighting. So there has to be an argument that must be won by common sense and convincing the other side and the populace that common sense must rule here. That's why Congress exists the way it exists. Romeldian says, what if there's nobody you want to for cause everyone else sucks? Then you're not looking, Romeldian. If somebody thinks that, they're not paying attention, because nobody doesn't suck. Everybody's got a sucky issue about them. What you've got to look at those times where, oh gosh, there's nobody that quite fits the bill for me, you have to take a step back maybe and look at the bigger picture and say, what does the country need? A general philosophy that follows this, or a general philosophy that follows that? And I only offer those two because there's never really any viable independent parties, because they all get swallowed up by the rest. You may not like that, but that's the fact of the matter. So I think what you have to do, you have to look at what's going on out there. And if you don't necessarily like a candidate because he doesn't stand on this, you may like him for this issue, but you don't like him on that issue. Or that guy over on that side of the aisle, you may like him for that issue, but you hate him on those issues. And the problem you've got there, then you've got to take it and you've got to step back a little bit. Like Romeldian, you live in Minnesota. You think Governor Walz needs to stay in office? If I was in Minnesota, now is Governor Walz a nice man? Maybe. does Governor Walz, what kind of political agenda does he support? That's where you have to start pulling it apart and looking at what he supports. And if you say the other guy, his opponent, is going to do better, but you don't agree with everything his opponent says, what are you going to do? You got to vote for the other guy. Because you know what? Unless you're a singular issue voter, it's like, let's just pull one out of the air because it's a big topic, abortion. Let's say if all you're voting for is to support or deny an abortion right, one or the other, what you view as supporting or denying abortion, you're missing a lot of things because not every but you have to look at the bigger picture of the issue too. Who's going to support what cause? And if they support it, what does the rest of their agenda stand for? If they're against it, what does the rest of their agenda stand for? This is what you've got to look at. So when you're in as much debt as the USA, the bank is the government, says Rapid Dog. Yeah, pretty much. The bank kind of owns the government. But you know what? That's like, I remember when I was married to my ex-wife, her mother funded my first business to move us back from Detroit. She said, I'll move you back. She said, because I had another option to stay out of state. And she made an offer of, I'll fund a new company for you so you can start your own little business and move you guys, pay the expenses to move you back up here if you move up. And so we opted for that because we had new babies, my twin daughters. They were new babies at the time. And that tells you how long ago that was, 31 years ago. And so we opted to come back up, but I had that same mother-in-law tell me, I've got a string on you now. I've got you. She actually, at a Thanksgiving, I was sitting watching football, and there was commercials or something. Everybody got up for a second. I'm sitting in the living room. She walks by with a drink in her hand, and she says, I've got you under my thumb, right where I want you. Now, did she have the financial clout over me? Did she have some financial stuff over me because she funded us, our move and all of that? Yeah. But you know what my response to that was? I looked at her and I said, bullshit, you got control over me. So maybe the banks in the country own the government. The banks can't tell the government what to do. The banks can't foreclose on the government and just shut them down and take over the capital. I mean, you want to see an insurrection? Let the banks lead an insurrection. Maybe they're doing a financial one. So I'm not so worried about that. The government owns most of the banks, says Leslie. This, like everything else, they were never intended to have that kind of power. Yeah, very true. Fight fire with fire, fight stupidity with stupidity, says Sarah Youssef to Professor Bauer. Chad Sanders, bitch, I'll lose your money. Yeah, there's that too. Could the banks legally get away with losing the money for the United States? I think there'd be some pretty shaky ground there. So who knows? There's a novel in that little conspiracy scenario there. You should write that one, Chad. Write that book. That might be kind of interesting to read. Professor Bauer says the current astrological alignments are similar to 1860. Major changes ahead. Check out Jeff Harmon's latest on his new YouTube channel. I'll have to do that. Jeff Harmon's usually pretty spot on with things. But now, I remember he was kind of predicting that there would be a big shakeup and Trump would win unless the shakeup in the last presidential election was that Trump was going to lose by whatever means you want to define it as. And I won't say the word lest I be demonetized for expressing my opinion and just talk and have a conversation about something. But you know what I mean. So Chad says, look how much they got in the 08 BS. I don't know off the top of my head what exactly and precisely you're referring to, but maybe we should make that a topic of a show, because we could maybe talk about that, teach ourselves all some more history. And so there's my thinking on it. Tomorrow, go vote your conscience. I paused at that because I almost don't want to say vote your conscience. Don't vote your conscience, vote your common sense tomorrow. Vote the common sense God gave a rock. Or the other way around. We used to say, you've got the common sense that God gave a rock. Or you don't have the common sense to come in out of the rain. Or that's what I want to say to people. When you vote tomorrow, have the common sense to come in out of the rain. Add the numbers together. Connect the dots. And there's not many dots to connect. You just have to actually open your eyes and look at it and go, is this what you want to maintain? Is the current state of affairs what you want to maintain, or do you want to incorporate change? And I actually think it's just high time, after this much being swayed to one side of the coin, it's going to flip. And there's going to be a flippage tomorrow. The big, as Steve Clark says, flip a coin, both sides are corrupt. I don't give a flying rat's ass what people say about both sides being corrupt. I think there are corrupt people everywhere, no matter what their political ideology is. I don't think both sides are corrupt. I think there's some very good people on the left. I also think there's very corrupt people on the right. And flip that around. You're not voting for the fact that everybody's corrupt or everybody's got a sin nature or something like that. Everybody's human. But what you got to do is vote for the people on whatever side of the aisle or the coin who you believe is going to get our country closer to where it needs to be. Does that mean it's going to be done and nobody's going to be corrupt in a rebuilding, or that everybody's going to be pretty and smell like daisies because they are on one side or the other? No, it just means that I believe that there are people out there that are going to do what needs to be done to make things better, and they truly want to make things better. Politics is the great corrupter, says Professor Bauer. Sure it is. Yeah, we all know that. I would enter into politics and not become corrupt, though. I'll tell you that right away, because I already am corrupt. No, that's a joke. It's a joke. I'm not really corrupt. But I think that there are some people who can maintain not being corrupt. I can think of some politicians off the top of my head, that names that I would throw out there and say they're not corrupt. Do they do everything perfectly? No. Do they do everything as I would do it? No. Have they never tried to support the people that have put them in office, be it supporters? No. That's all out there. I get that. Scotty, true, it was just easier to say both sides are corrupt than spelling it all out. Exactly, Steve. Yeah, I get that. I get what you were saying. So, Chief Romeldian, are counting the dark elites who aren't human? I don't know. I don't know which ones aren't human. Do you? We don't know that. What we've got is on face value, surface value. Those who are dark human, there's no way to prove that unless you've been in their toilet and seen their webbed feet or whatever it is. I don't know. Or seen them peel off their human skin suit. We don't know that. Do we know there are dark forces at play out there behind the scenes? Sure we do. But there are also good forces out there behind the scenes at play. We want to focus on the worst possible common denominator because that's the one usually we have to deal with. It seems like the good or the light always seems to take a back seat. It's like the evil or the dark, or that all builds up, and then light's got to come back out and go, okay, time for me to make an appearance. When we believe that much, that there's that much darkness out there, why are we always saying people are innately good? There's a theological conundrum for you. People are innately good, but everything's always dark and evil, and the evil will overtake so easily. But everybody's so good. Everybody's good at heart. I don't believe that. So I believe everybody has goodness in them, everybody has evil in them, and it's what they want to do to cater to one side or to nurture one side or the other. So Matthew Sainsbury says, yes, John Kennedy believed there was an under-government against him. Sure he did. And that's probably what got him killed. or it was some whack job with a gun from the book depository building. How do you know for sure? Why did Ronald Reagan get shot? Why did John Lennon get shot? Well, John Lennon wasn't a world leader, but you know what I mean. There are evil, stupid people out there that do evil, stupid things. Does that mean they are controlled by a dark entity? I don't know. I take it at face value. Professor Bauer says the cabal is at the end of the Piscean energy circle. That's why they're throwing everything at the walls in the corner. Who's they? And who's they doing it, Professor Bauer? Who are these guys? What are they doing? All I can say is most people out there aren't in tune with that. They don't know that. So what are they going to do? How are they going to combat that? I think you have to look at what is the overall narrative, what is the overall agenda, what is the end game that's being aimed at. That was a cool letter by Johnson. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Uncle Dave. We'll have to talk about that maybe in the after show, folks, if you're going to stick around, if you're just listening on radio or you're just watching the radio show. Remember, when this show ends at the end of the hour, we go right over into the captain's cabin. And that'll take place right about 10 o'clock sharp. 10 o'clock sharp by me watch. And then we get a little, let our hair down a little bit. Maybe Professor Bauer will come in and give us all a lesson that we need to learn. He'll cut a switch from the astronomical tree and say, or he'll tell us, you go out in the backyard now, you cut yourself a switch out of that astronomical tree and you bring it here. I'm going to whoop you. So, boy, I sounded more like Ken Ballos there than anybody. So, 26 minutes in, shall we get to topic? No, Sarah. You're not the boss of me. Yeah, we'll get to topic. I didn't really have a topic tonight. I got a topic I kind of chose that I wanted to talk about. And so we'll get there. We're working our way there. I thought by the bottom of the hour, I'd at least be there. Let me take a sip of water first. Spring water. I don't like regurgitated water, by the way. I don't like going to the store to buy water we've purified this water. Purified it from what? I mean, does that mean it's purified from the ground or is it purified from the sewage system? Where's it purified? I want spring water. You give me North Icelandic spring water. North Icelandic spring water, or give me Hawaiian Fiji water. I guess that's not Hawaii. You give me something filtered through volcanic rock and imported from Fiji, I'll drink that. Don't give me stuff that's been purified. I don't like purified water. It makes me feel like I'm drinking something I shouldn't be drinking. Ken Ballos, welcome to the show. Welcome to the chat room. Vote tomorrow. Freedom on the line. I think you're right. Long term, that's where I stand on it. So get your heads together, folks, when you vote tomorrow. And vote what is. Don't vote your conscience. Vote what is right for the country. And think about it. And if your conscience is off whack on that, get your conscience lined up. Conscience isn't always pure and right. Conscience is the product of what we do and what we put into our heads, the hopper in there. You lift the lid, you throw all the shit in there, you twirl it around, then you have conscience about it. Let your conscience shouldn't be your guide. Let conscience be your guide. I want to be a real boy. Well, how about tomorrow? I want to be a real American. I want to be a real citizen. I want not my conscience to be my guide. I want my common sense to be my guide. You fill in the blanks there. What's common sense? What isn't? All right. And now at the behest of Sarah Youssef, I'm going to get to topic, which I didn't really have one, but I've got one that I was going to throw out there, depending on how much time I was going to leave myself after my political diatribe at the beginning of the show. And so change your thinking gears now. Let's get off politics for a while, at least the politics of government. Let's get on the politics of biblical understanding, exegete, biblical theology, and so on, because I want to hit a topic that is kind of the flip side of things I've talked about before. But I want you to think about this as we dig into this. And what I want to talk about, I've got in front of me 10 reasons why the New Testament is not presenting myth. Now, how many times have I said the Bible is Christian mythology, Judeo-Christian mythology, meaning it is the product, all those books put together into the one book. It's a product of all the thinking and philosophizing and theologizing and perhaps inspiring of God put into a book. And I've always I've traditionally come out and said, I've got a problem with these passages, with this, the way this was written, the way that was. When I did my big series on David, it was, what did I call it? David, the real life hero. No, I'm sorry. The real man behind the invented hero. Meaning David was a real guy, but did the Bible present an apologetic to make him the kind of guy that he was? And you can clearly see it. And it fits the times that it was written in. And so I have questioned. That series was before your time, Sarah. You could go back and listen to it. It's one of the almost 800 shows that I have archived on my YouTube channel. I'm glad you asked, Sarah. There are on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, about 800 videos of almost every show we've done since the inception of this show in its current form about 3.5-4 years ago. And I think I did the David series before I was with Odyssey and then moved on to Subspace. So you can, zeitgeist, there's a good word for it. Thank you, Rapid Dog. So take a look. You scroll down on my main page on my YouTube, you'll find the David series is in there. I think there were 17 episodes of the King David series. David, the real life story of an invented hero. You might enjoy that. So let's get into this now. This is from work. This is not original with me. This is Paul K. Hubbard wrote the 10 reasons why the New Testament is not presenting myth. And I was invited, but haven't yet, to talk a bit about his stuff in a discussion forum. And the standard model of the New Testament and the Bible in general fails to explain why we have to encourage or exchange this stereotypic apostolic Christ for a modern zoo of all this philosophical gobbledygook determined Christs that exist. And I've done it myself. I presented different pictures of who I thought Christ was and what I thought the early church was. And I thought it might be good to go back and take a look from a Greek scholar who studied, what the New Testament is written in, primarily Greek with some Aramaic. And the standard model insists that the apostolic Christ, the one presented by the apostles, in other words, in the Gospels and in all the books in the New Testament, is nothing but a psychological projection, and that the real historical Jesus has simply dropped off out of historical view. And it insists that all that's left to the historian is the certain knowledge that Jesus cannot be the apostolic Christ, or the Christ as presented by the apostles. This is a very suspicious historical perspective. And he caught me with that because sometimes there's things that maybe tickle my ears, as Paul, the apostle, warned people about, even though I have my problems with Paul. Be careful that you don't teach something simply because it falls outside of what you've always been taught and you want to rebel against that or something like that. And so I've been guilty of that at times, of saying, look, I don't buy this and I don't buy that. Therefore, I've got to look for the chinks in the armor. Not necessarily to find the chinks in the armor, but to say, there's something here that doesn't add up. And that's why I've done some of the things I've done and looked into and studied some of the things I've done. Why I think you can expand on things you find in the Bible to a great deal with anthropology and archaeology and history and all of that. But there's a liberalism in scriptural interpretation that's wearied the world. It's been pervasive with who Jesus cannot be. What the world needs now is a convincing idea of who Jesus actually is or was. And one thing's for certain, whatever sort of ordinary historical Jesus that we assume as the starting point of our modern theory, we must also end with an ordinary psychological and literary theory of how the apostles all evolved such an extraordinary, unified, non-historical Jesus. So the big thing in current day, and by current, I mean for decades now, almost 100 years now, especially with the Jesus movements and the historical Jesus, the search for the historical Jesus and so on, there has been that need to say certainly the Jesus that we learned about in Sunday school and in church and in song, there's got to be more to him because we can't find the historical Jesus. So he must be something else. And so at first, that whole standard model seems to work pretty well. The idea that the gospelers projected their own personalities and their own religious holy man ideals upon Christ, such as we have a Matthean Christ, Matthew, a Johnine Christ that John wrote about, a Lucian Christ, a Markian Christ. All of these Christs existed from different perspectives. This could account for the distinctive differences in perspectives of each gospel. Now, the problem comes in when the standard model fails to extract a lowest common denominator Jesus from these four psychological projections. Despite the fact that we live in a literary age in which men pride themselves on their ability to make critical psychological evaluations. And these evaluations should yield comprehensive insights on what motivated individual gospel writers in their formative communities. But so far, we have nothing except a statement of denial that says, we have not found the historical Jesus. We know not from whence he is. That's kind of the basic statement that's out there. And so the standard model assumes a theological evolution, which has been projected upon the memory of the historical Christ. And this projection is alleged to have begun with the Gospels and elaborately continued by the Apostle Paul. And remember, they say now, those who dig into the languages and the linguistic of the Gospels say Mark is probably the earliest one. But he obviously took his stuff from an earlier prototype by the style of writing that's used and the way things are said and the way it's passed on, and that the other gospel writers simply took information from him. Luke added his own histories and so on. This is the way it's presented to us, and that affects the memory of the historical Christ. But it began with the Gospels, elaborately continued by the Apostle Paul, who I believe in a sense, hijacked the Christianity from the original Christians. And he wrote, remember, there were all different kinds of Christianity right there in those first couple of decades after the death of Jesus. There was the Jewish Christians. There was the Herodians. There was the Greek. You know, there were all these different philosophies of which Christ you're following. Paul represented the Herodians, or a Roman side, and he actually won out. And what you've got in the New Testament is a Pauline version of the New Testament. Remember, he and Peter, the great fisherman, the disciple apostle, they really battled over this stuff in those first years. Paul was a Herodian Christian. Peter was a Jewish Christian. And they knocked heads a lot on their theology. So what do you do with all that? What happened to Paul, who had Pharisaical training, by the way? The model with Paul has produced no comprehensive, incredible theory about where such a theology could have come from, nor has it been able to extract a credible historical Jesus from the process of projection and elaboration. So how could Paul have invented a complex, lawless religion in the face of his Pharisaical training? He went totally the opposite direction. Some say he was mandated and asked to do so by none other than Nero himself, which is interesting because Nero's the one who also had him put to death. How could Paul have invented this complex religion, which was totally counter to his Pharisaical training? And there's no circumstantial motives presented in the text. What happened to Paul doesn't look like a theological evolution. Well, some say, well, there's a conversion. One day he's killing Christians. The next he's arguing in the synagogues that Jesus is the Christ. And it will not do to say that he had an epiphany about a lawless religion on one hand, and then to accuse him of an excessively legalistic Christianity on the other. And if Paul did dream up this vast theological system in the depths of his own tortured psychology, how did he single-handedly win over Peter, the Jewish Christian, Matthew, Mark, proud but bigoted Jews, and so many of the other apostles? Because remember, Peter was, and that's a good way to put it, he was a bigoted Jewish Christian, bigoted against the Gentiles. Paul won him over. So we have to ignore for the moment that the standard model doesn't know what the true historical Jesus looks like. Let's assume for the moment that the Jesus of history is some variant of the good liberal, that he preaches some good variant of modern, and by the way, I put quotation marks around good liberal. He preaches a variant of modern existentialism that's far ahead of his time. And the question now is, how did such an ordinary religious existentialist of history become this miracle-working, only begotten Son of God in the minds of the apostles? If the apostolic accounts cannot be taken at face value as historically true, surely they can be taken at face value as historically false, right? And if they are historically false, then it should be relatively easy to prove this. And this is the fatal flaw of the standard model. If we would only carefully examine the problem at this level, we would find that it's not at all easy to prove that the apostolic account is historically false. Thus, we would immediately find, for example, that the standard model is a very narrowly limited one to the following two alternatives in explaining such a disjuncture in the story. That is, again, how did such an ordinary religious existentialist of history become the miracle-working, only begotten Son of God in the minds of the apostles? There's the big question. Where did the apostles get such a comprehensive, completely disjointed myth, quote unquote, to project upon this man we know as Jesus of Nazareth? So the apostles foisted a community myth upon the data. That is, everyone knew that Christ's body was eaten by dogs, for example, but that the spiritual Christ was raised in some metaphysically parallel universe. Sounds so dumb to say that, doesn't it? Even though the accounts all seem to say, in the most restrictive and ordinary sense, that Jesus fed 5,000 men. What really happened was that his teachings that man does not live by bread alone so suddenly becomes so metaphysically real to this very large assembly that these people began to realize en masse that it was as if they had all eaten and become full and had 12 baskets of fragments left over. See, this is the reasoning that's put to use in these situations. So here's the hypothetical encounters, the hypothetical that you encounter, and it's in these following difficulties. And since we really only got about 11 minutes left or so before we're off air with the radio station, I may just go through the points and try to examine a couple of them. There's 10 points here I want you to look at. Remember, this is the 10 reasons why the New Testament is not presenting a myth. I hear so many people, and it bristles me. Whenever I quote scripture or talk about the Bible, they go, oh, the Bible, that book of fables. Nothing true in that. And I say, au contraire. That's where I take them to history, as I've done with you here, and I've talked about like Pilate's cornerstone and things like that, the archaeological discoveries that fly in the face of it all being a myth. Anyway, let's move on. Number 1, Roman and Greek myths come from upper class. All the upper class. Look at mythology. Literalism comes from guys who were fishermen, hunters, tax collectors, prostitutes, religious legalists. Folk culture doesn't originate legend and myth. It can only perpetuate legend and myth. Get that? Folk culture does not originate legend and myth. It can only perpetuate it. All right? Now, there's no coherent evidence that the apostolic Christ has any direct linkage to apparent established myth. It's like the corn god myths. It's like Isis and Osiris. But there's no religious mentality pregnant to deliver such a myth into the lower class of Palestine at that time. So myth is something that's perpetuated. Number 2, Sarah says, myths come from those who can perpetuate them, so they would have to be educated, therefore rich. I read your sentence wrong, but I read it clunky. But exactly. The myths come from those who can perpetuate them. They would have to have come from the educated, and the educated were usually the people who had money to be educated. So, second point, it projects a Cartesian worldview of dualism upon the apostolic mind. Now, all this phenomenon is described as logomorphism or logomorphism, the great logos, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with God, and so on. The great logos, which we talked about, the Greek logos, which is the tendency to project modern ways of thinking back into a logical age. For example, the religious existentialism of the modern age, with its kind of two-tiered conception of truth. Truth appears to be completely unknown to an apostolic community of the first century. And so this is everywhere present in the way that the authors of the New Testament materials are completely aware of the parabolic nature of language itself. In other words, they don't childishly play with language. They are conscious of all the rhetorical categories of myth, of parable, of figures and types, and discursively illogical and poetically metaphorical. And the major players of these stories are ordinary people who knew the difference between normal and abnormal, who knew that virgins don't get pregnant. There's no blurring of the apostolic narratives between fantasy and reality of the kind which exists in the modern mind. There are no unimaginably unintuitive quantum theories of parallel universes in the apostolic mind. Either a cat is dead or it's not dead. Not dead and alive at the same time, as in some of the modern ideas of physics. And there's no virtual realities in which history itself is a shadowy abstraction. There's no paranormal. There's no reheated Persian pantheism which says that the world is all an illusion or a dream of God. The world of the apostles was hardcore, it was real, it was dusty and dirty, just as it was to Aristotle. So yes, it was populated with a pantheon of spirits, but these spirits were as real as rocks. There is no word for real in the Koine Greek. And the apostolic world simply did not conceive of a metaphysical, modern world of improvable, parallel dark universes. Dark energy, dark matter, which comes popping in and out of existence. It just did not exist in the context of those writers' minds. And the alleged myth-making of the apostles looks very much like a projected face of the superstitions of the modern mind. So there it is. The myth-making of the apostles looks very much like the projected face of the superstitions of the modern mind. We throw back onto those things that did not exist in context to their times. The Greeks spoke of ether and rumors, says Sarah, or the realm of the unseen, which entities were said to reside. Exactly. A wall of shadows, Plato said. Thank you, Matthew Sainsbury. So we can go on. I will not even touch the tip of finishing this material. Maybe we'll carry this into tomorrow night. But because we've only got a few minutes left, let me just look at my clock and do a little math here for when I have to back out. Yeah, I got about a minute and a half. And I got to start backing out of the radio show and go into the captain's cabin. I'll give you the third point of this, and maybe we'll discuss it a little bit in the after show. But number 3 is it contradicts the expressly stated purpose and reporting methodology of the apostolic community. All the apostles are quite aware that there was an invisible world everywhere, interpenetrating the visible world. But in their witness to the events concerning Christ, it's made perfectly clear that there is no attempt to confuse the two. There is no confounding of spiritual sight with physical sight. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and our hands have handled, the word of life. A quote from Scripture. And this is precisely the reporting methodology with which the apostles say that Christ commanded. And we don't have time for the radio audience to go beyond that for tonight, because we've got to get out of here in about 30 seconds. So those of you in the radio, if you want to come and join us in the after show, the Captain's Cabin, come on over to the YouTube channel, and you can join us, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And but until then, just want to say, live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
And well, welcome back to the after show, the Captain's Cabin. And those of you on the radio, you're still here. You know why? I misread the timer. The one timer, the clock said the time, and the timer said something not different. It was just, there's the time, 55:57 after the hour, and over there it says 52:59. It's now 53 minutes into the radio show. So frankly, we still have 2 minutes left of the radio show. So you all got to hear what the opening to the after show sounds like, if you've never heard it from the radio side of things. But I think since we're already here, we aren't going to do anything different. We'll just drop off in a little less than 2 minutes from the radio station, and we'll say our quick goodbyes again. Like, okay, bye. It's time for you to really go now. So I wasn't reading the timer. I was reading the clock, and I confused myself because I was talking at the same time and pushing buttons. So there you go. Yeah, and you're right. I think that this is a good show. You're going to get a little feedback. Might be coming in here too, because of the we're still hooked up to the stream. So and I've got my sound up, so I can take that sound down right now. Hopefully you don't pick up the feedback, like a ghost in the machine type of thing. So we've got we've got less than a minute left for the radio audience now. This is your taste of what the after show is like, even though you didn't really get much of it. You only got 2 minutes of it because of my my timing foible. And you got to hear but not see the titles to the new show, and or the after show. So I want to thank you for being here over in the radio audience. Do your obeisance to subspace.radio, and we'll be off of there in just a few seconds. And come on over to my YouTube channel. Again, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And when you're there, hit subscribe and also hit the thumbs up and give us a like over here. Those of you still over there on the YouTube channel, give the likes up to the show. Helps the algorithms. 2 seconds. Live long and prosper, radio audience. All right, now it's just us, guys. Now it's us over here on the YouTube after show, and the radio is gone from us now. It is a thing of the past. So we don't bite much, says Sarah Yusuf. Too bad they couldn't see that. If I'd have caught that ahead of time, I would have told them. So, there's enough meat to this particular 10-point thing I'm looking at that I think we'll pick this up tomorrow night, even though I was planning it as kind of an afterthought. I'll just run through the 10 points in the second half of the show, because I'm going to probably spend the first half talking about the upcoming election. So there it is, folks. We are here. We are in the after show. If you want to come on board, you're certainly welcome to. And you can do that by following this link that I am pasting into the chat room. If you want to talk about the elections coming up tomorrow, your thoughts on that, you are welcome to express it. As Ken Ballos likes to say, you can say whatever you want. The show's not about me, it's about you. You can come in and if I'm presenting something to you and I'm the only one talking, it's not about me, it's about you. It's about what I'm presenting. And for you. Now, when you have the opportunity to speak, you've got the opportunity. The floor is yours to come on in and talk about any of this stuff about the election you'd like to talk to. I realize some of you are not voting in tomorrow's election because you're not a United States citizen. I know a couple of you are right now over there in the chat room. And so maybe you've got an opinion about the politics of the country, but not necessarily one from the point of view of a voter in this country. But many of you listening that are here tonight, you can express your opinion. Come on over and do it. You've got the open forum. I pasted the link. If you don't see the link is in the description of the show over on the YouTube channel. And you can certainly click in here. I'll see you come up in the window down below. You don't have to look good if you think, I don't look good enough for coming on. So don't turn on your camera. Just have your mic on. Come on in and we'll talk about stuff. If you want to talk about some of the stuff we're talking about regarding the mythology of the New Testament, you can certainly come in and we can talk about that a little bit. Remember, the whole topic was the 10 reasons why the New Testament is not presenting myth. It's presenting something else, perhaps truth. And we left off on the point. It was the third point here that states it contradicts the expressly stated purpose and reporting methodology of the apostolic community. And so all the apostles, they were all aware that there was an invisible world everywhere that interpenetrates everything in the visible world around them. But in their witnesses to the events concerning Christ, it made perfectly clear that there is no attempt to confuse the two. There's no confounding of spiritual sight with physical sight. And then it set us up for that verse where Jesus said, answering, he said to them, go your way and tell John what things you've seen and heard, and how that the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, to the poor the gospel is preached. And it's in the same method assumed that when Christ chides Nicodemus, he said, how can I believe these things? How can a man enter into his mother's womb and be born a second time? And Jesus answered him, and he said, if I were to tell you, or had told you, earthly things, and you don't believe it, how should you believe if I tell you of heavenly things? And Jesus used that reasoning. And in this method, it's assumed that when Christ condemns the self-inflicted blindness of the religious establishment of his day, he said, you hypocrites, you cannot discern the face of the sky and of the earth, but how is it that you do not discern this time? And so it's interesting stuff when you look at it. Oh, we got Professor Bauer sitting out there. I was in a different window and I didn't see you right away. How you doing, Prof?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good. I'm going to take this banner down so I don't block your face off. There we go. Boom.
Sometimes, like I've said, I got a face for radio, so sometimes blocking it's your best option.
There it is. Well, in the famous words of Bill and Ted in their excellent adventure, how's it hanging, Death?
Low.
Death, how's it hanging?
Low and slow is always my response.
There it is.
Was it some movie? Maybe it was one of the Jackass movies. Somebody called somebody a pussy. It was one guy calling another guy a pussy, and he looked at him. He says, 35 pounds of swinging meat. Oh, he called him a boy. He says, 35 pounds of swinging meat, and you call me boy?
Nice. Nice.
So, what's that?
I said, take that one.
Yeah, that's right.
So
there's a couple of things that I heard through the show. I was in the chat and seeing some of the commentary. So there's two things that I'd like to put my 25 cents on the table with.
Please do.
Okay. So one is the elections, and the other is more importantly, well, just as important, but we'll start first with the whole subject that you've been going over in the show, which is whether the information that has been expressed in the New Testament, where did it come from? What's its intent? And the meaning behind it versus historical context, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think is very fascinating when you look at history and the concept of the universe, of the ether you had mentioned, right? What Leibniz called monads, right? And when you go back to even, before Greek philosophy and that development system, Aristotle it was known basically throughout the Greek culture that the way they looked at the universe is that everything was living. Everything has a soul, and the soul is what forms the being. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like Sheldrake's morphic resonance, where there is a memory in nature. And whatever the frequency sets are that the oak seed, you, me, the anything that's in nature that's organic has a soul, and therefore it had some level of consciousness. So everything was looked at as life. We called the stars and the planets even by the gods, right? And the Greeks referred to them as the gods in the sky. So there was a concept that everything was esoteric in that sense. It was just accepted that everything was alive: the earth, the solar system, the sun, plants, animals, everything, but to varying degrees of consciousness. And that consciousness would determine how it would function as it formed. And so the formation of energy and the organic life around us was always thought of as having its own reason for existence, its own character, its own soul, its own consciousness. So
turn down your sound if you could, Dave.
Oh, that's you. Yes. Right.
So my point there is that when you think of the major religious texts and the theologies behind them as being there's a God, there's some type of pathway to that God, and that it is your responsibility to do the right thing, choosing said path, whatever the religion is. They all have that. Even in Buddhism, there is that kind of thing. Taoism and Shintoism are two that really don't. They have more of an organic Greek-oriented kind of belief about the universe. Everything is alive. We live in an alive environment and universe. So when you think about the teachings that are in these different theologies and beliefs, they all have these same characteristics of there is a universe, whether it's non-formed entities, ghosts, demons, angels. In fact, all of this really got changed with the what we have is known as our current modern science. Okay.
Yes.
Sarah,
I have always said, by the way, make a point on that, as I've said that skepticism and science, when you mix them together, I said that's really become just a surrogate for religion. And I said, because you have chosen, not that there aren't facts there, take that out of there, but when you supplant religious belief or faith belief with a scientific belief, you're creating a surrogate out of science.
Well, let's become
lack of faith in something else.
It's become its own thing. It's known as scientism. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So scientism is the result of, and this is the important thing that I think is coming through some of the texts that you talked about with the New Testament, but even more so in some of the more ancient systems, the Vedic texts, all the different writings that we're just now finding out about in Asia, in the South Pacific in particular. So my point is that there is a constant way in which we used to think. All of the major civilizations that we know of in our last 10, 12,000 years had this high mentality of visual spirituality and the consciousness and the oneness with the ether, however it was expressed. And that was the way everybody thought. Well, when you get to basically, the 1700s is when the current system of science took hold, and it was started by Descartes. And it's known as I was going to mention, Sarah mentioned earlier, dualism. So Descartes, because what was happening was you had all the religions, particularly in the West, and the Catholic Church had hold over where Descartes in France was, and most of Europe, as it was known at that time. And the way that what he did is he said, we are now through our scientific method able to understand the mind of God. We understand the mind of God because we've discovered the math that God, as the great engineer, created and then basically pushed the start button and let it run. Okay. So Descartes said no, because we now know all these mathematical things about the universe that we know as. Science will take all the material things, and the church and religions can have all of the non-material things. angels, demons, consciousness, the mind, God, all of that. So that separation is what became known as what's known as Cartesian dualism. It split everything. So there was no longer a conscious nature. There was now a scientific explanation for it.
Right.
Okay. So that split, when Descartes kicked that in, that kicked off all kinds of stuff. In the Renaissance, we started with materialism, and then with Descartes, we got mechanism. So what we see in the way we look at things in science is all based on that side of Cartesian dualism. It's all mechanistic materialism. When you think about how all the science is, what you see is that it's all based on, and that's quantum mechanics, physics, string theory, are all based on things that the only way it can be defined is if you can observe it. So the observer effect is key to all things quantum, except for the math. The math now becomes something that you can theorize. It's like you'd mentioned Schrodinger earlier about, is a cat dead or alive, right?
Yes.
Well, in the quantum mechanics, when Schrodinger put together the wave calculation, is his theory, it was based on all possibilities. So that means the calculation said, if your choice is either the cat is dead or alive, what are all the different permutations that could possibly mathematically be expressed? Right. So Schrodinger's cat, and it was fixed. The experiment was fixed because it was 50-50. It was either or. But in quantum mechanics, when you put that into the equation, all these different possibilities pop out, and they are only possibilities. They are not realities. So, but as soon as you know the answer, the observer sees what is going on, that you have what they call the collapse of the wave function. Boom, that instantly you know something. Where am I going with all this?
Yes, where are you going?
You wonder, I
idea.
saw that look on your face, and I thought, I'll go ahead and ask the question.
You preempted me.
I think you got an idea. I don't know what it is.
I see you going. I'm just not sure where. So
Haven't lost me yet.
Okay, so to me, understanding that timeline and looking at, again, these are metrics of the matrix, right? These are things that you can chunk up and see, and you can try to figure out, this information I've got now, then down the road, you've got a shitload more information that you can now filter the original observation through, and you get more information. That's what we call experience, right? And then we have an experience, we have knowledge of the experience. We then, over time, understand or gain an understanding of the experience. And then after so much understanding, we actually become kind of wise, get a little wisdom. And then after wisdom, we get to what would be called enlightenment. And enlightenment is not necessarily a mental thing. It's where your entire being lightens. Enlightenment, right? So, having said all that,
okay,
here's where I'm coming back and
here's where I'm going with this.
I'm trying to bring it back to the election so I can get off the mic and let it marinate. So, if you're thinking about the observer effect, which is what we all do, that is and consciousness, that's the most important thing we all experience. That's why we can be who we is and do what we do. When you come to that point, you realize it's all an observation. Then you start figuring out, well, how well am I observing? What am I looking at? And is it improving? It's that self-examination. You do your A/B test on yourself, and you improve over time. And that happens with no matter what it is that you pursue. So observing what's going on at any given point is one of the most important things that we all do all the time. And we have to do in order to move as positively as possible as we go with the flow. This entire time, we're experiencing this. We are being bombarded with information, projection, and the entire postulation of this is what is going on. And you have to look at it, and you look for sources. You have to, because of the amount of information we have now, you look for sources that you feel have some level of credibility, because you have gotten information from that source before, and it was good, turned out to be right. So in order to manage that, what has happened in this last few years, and in particular, it's been highly acute during this election cycle, is two powerful things: projection and persuasion. Those two things have been front and center, in my opinion, as I'm observing. It has been the main energy driving whatever the message is, right? And that has to be important. Otherwise, your message is just going to, it's going to go by you. When you look at the metrics that they use in the news and in the political components, and they have all these different charts and these trends and these things, and all this stuff goes this way over time, and it's typically this has an average of that, and whatever it might be, there's some kind of math that's been applied to some information that somebody's now concocted, and they're trying to persuade you with projection that this is the right information. And what's happened now across just about everything you could think of, every piece of data we've now found out has been at least questionable at best, and completely mangled and full of shit at worst.
Yeah, pretty much.
So when you look at what's going on from those metrics as just a citizen and an occupant in the country, and trying to participate as positively as possible, you look at this stuff and you go, I need to keep checking with the data and see if these recurring patterns are actually happening. And that, to me, is the most important thing that you get out of the data that they conveniently package up for us, right? So when you look at this, if you remove any emotional attachment to any of the political components, the party, the policy, the people, right? You look at that and you go, well, all you need is a good 5 minutes with any one of them, and you can get a pretty good sense from your own intuition whether that is somebody that you feel like you could agree with, right?
Right,
and that you want to get that. So what we're seeing is this major bifurcation that has had all of these different pieces of data and charts, and then it's the persuasion of the political positioning and the projection that is going on from either side. The one consistent thing that I've noticed, and it's been happening for a while, but this is the intensity of it now is just off the charts, off of my charts, yes. is that the narrative on one side of the political choice is very, very dour, very dire, very, holy shit, it's going to get, you think it's bad now, it's going to get even worse, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And the other side's going, we've given you a chance. You've had enough. We've had enough. Okay.
Yep.
You can't do this anymore because it's clear that you are at least incompetent, highly inept. And it looks like there's a pattern of doing it on purpose, publicly, consistently.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, now you don't have to have any kind of political, religious, ideological perspective to just look at the data objectively. And that's the easiest way to do it, because if you get attached to too many things, then your emotions will squirrel you off in the wrong direction.
Very
and that's
true.
what happens with most people most of the time, unfortunately. But
he did, Roger.
Okay.
Aren't you following with us?
I think I understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is the Republicans are going to take the House.
I think that I think that the way that it's politically carved up, I think that the team on the right, on the red, are going to score big time, and it'll be the end of the game when they do this score. I think that possibility is extremely high. I also think that because of the people that are involved, and again, all you have to do is I saw a clip today. You know, there's one of the things that has been a main component in the entire message and crap that they're putting out for narration is that you're an election denier, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
These people that put this stuff out there forget that there's video, there's audio.
Yeah.
And it was on Jimmy Dore's show earlier. I'm going to try to find this. It was everything from 2000 to 2020.
I posted that video.
And you go, okay, so how does this fall into your definition of election deniers? Is this something different that we are seeing that looks exactly the same of what you are talking about?
It was about 20 minutes. 20 minutes of people restating the same phrase over and over again from every political.
And there's
up to politics.
Exactly, and there's that out there as well. But that's just a part of the data set. So I think the team on the right, the red guys, are going to beat the team on the left, the blue guys. I think that there's more to this in the sense of what's driving this win than just the charts. Yeah, thank you. The charts in my charts. I mean, they are. You look at it and you go, well, oh, yeah, the economy, inflation, and and all this stuff as it relates to immigration and abortion or whatever else. But there's something else afoot, in my opinion. I think that there's what I posted up. I'm beating the shit out of my Twitter that Musk has taken over. I'm having a grand time trying to stay off of there now, but shit, I'm posting like crazy. And I did the same thing on my Facebook.
And you're not being censored.
It's part of the reason I'm doing this. I'll see if I'm testing it. So,
right.
How's this? You going to get by with this? But
so now take that.
But I think what's happening is that I said in the post buyer's remorse meets you had your chance, we've had enough, and then add virus and vax fatigue with complete ineptness, and as the facts come out, okay, and then the last piece was and the math does itself. My point is that I think that this vax and virus fatigue is an underlying energy that's they're still pushing this shit. I mean, we pushed our our border crossing date back now to January 8th before they let just about every other country in the world lets people come in unvaccinated and leave unvaccinated. We still have, you can be a U.S. citizen and come in and go, but you can't come from any other foreign country, including Canada, till January 8th. At least that's where we're at now. They'll probably try to push it out. But I think that energy, what people had to go through, the people that suffered in major economic and life ways, and the impact to kids, and now all of the stuff coming out about the results are starting to come in, and it's not looking good for the vax folks. Okay,
that's right.
And is in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it's looking really bad. If it gets any worse, it's going to stink to high heaven. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. But I think that fatigue is what's driving a lot of the emotion towards people going, no, these guys are going to do into place. No. Yep. Yeah, we need these other guys aren't that bad, aren't that good either. But at least they seem to be more capitalists. They seem to be more freedom oriented kind of folks, and they do a pretty good job with business because they're mostly business folks now. The entire political posture between the left and the right, the Dems and the Republicans, has completely flipped in the last 20 years. I mean, when I grew up in the 60s and 70s in LA, we were the first liberals. And our motto was leave us alone and fuck the man. Okay.
There it is.
And that's not the liberal of today in any way, shape,
No.
or form. It's completely opposite. So I'd also mentioned back in the 90s, when I was doing my corporate stuff, I caught a lot of Rush Limbaugh and Hannity and Combs before Hannity
Mhm.
became real big, Smirkanish and these other guys who were pumping out, the right side of, against the left at that time. And one of the things that Limbaugh said, and he harped on this all the time, is that liberalism was a mental disease.
Yes.
And at least it might have been a disorder, but it was disease. And he kept pointing it out. And when you listen to what he said about it at the time, you see the definition and the characteristics of the left today. In spades now. I mean, they have turned on the gas on the stove. They've opened up all the water pipes. They are just letting it go in.
Full steam.
Because there's nothing else they can do. It's like I've harped on many times, and I'll shut up. When you are trying to sell something that you have to force people to take, you're not going to have a good economic model.
That's it.
Because if they don't want it and you force them to take it, they're just going to eventually all get together and say, no, we're going to go make our own. The self-organizing collective.
The example I gave the other day when my doctor, who I've known him for 10 years, he was my doc, and he asked me about a year and a half ago if I needed the you want me to give you the vax today? And when I was in for a visit, I said, no, I really don't. And he said, I know you. He's read my books and stuff, and he knows where I come from, and we've had lots of conversations. And he says, I know where you come from. He says, but let me ask you, he says, is there anything in particular that you find problematic with the vaccine? I'm curious. He said, I'd like to know. And I said, without getting too political about it, I said, when you have the federal government holding lotteries, bribing kids, which is basically what is, come and get your free bag of candy, and while you get your vaccination, whatever it was, some of the things they were giving,
$100. We'll give you $100 if you take
$100. I said, when the government has to bribe you to do that stuff, to take the vaccine, I said, I see an instant red flag. I don't even have to define every problem I have with it yet. I just see an instant red flag. I've got to bribe you to come in and take this. So this is what I have seen a lot of on the left. It's that trying to force the square peg into the round hole of narrative, of agenda, of politic. No matter what side you're on, you got to look at that, and when it's got to be forced on you like that, and then the reaction of most people is, why am I getting screwed? Then you have to be vernacular and crass about it. That's what I think motivates great changes, like I think we'll see tomorrow. It's that's one of those categories that you listed and mentioned. And of reasons of all these different puzzle pieces that have to come together for why we think tomorrow is going to happen the way it happens. Now, tomorrow night, we might know a little better. 2 nights from now, we might know much better. I don't think
it's going to take that long.
An election like this shouldn't take days to come.
Well, there's a number of scenarios because there are nefarious folks afoot.
Yes.
There's that.
And they are not necessarily aligned with one side or the other. They're, the Khazarian mafia model. It's something that's been in play and been at the top for a long time, centuries. And that control, that's why we have the financial system we do. It's
Mhm.
why we have the energy systems that we have, primarily the electricity we have now, not what's actually available and can be turned on literally immediately, which goes back to the ether, which goes back
Yep.
to
Yep.
Aristotle, and back forward to Tesla. There's a continuum there, which I'll save for another time. But that group, it's like a you think about, I guess it's kind of an analogy. Remember used to go to Sears and J.C. Penney and Montgomery Ward and and all those kind of department stores that had the pharmacy and the goodies. David,
You said monkey. You could get kicked out of school for
Oh,
that.
you can get kicked out of my kid's school for that.
that's what we called it back then.
By the way, let me before you carry on, Chuck, you made a couple of comments. I tried to put them up here to show what you were saying. You said nobody forced me to get vaccines. Happy to do it. Great. I said to anybody who wanted to get the vaccine, if that's what you want to do, nobody's forcing you.
I did the same thing,
Nobody's
Chuck. I've
forcing you
got
not
4
to do it.
vaccines in me.
I'm my whole point, maybe it got missed in the clutter of the conversation, but not that people were forced to take it, but when the government uses means to try to coerce people to take it,
And they did do that.
there's a problem. And they did do that to a great extent.
Well,
Your second one, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you said, Chuck, you also said denying an election before the actual election, and you laugh about it. I'm not denying any election. I don't think I'm denying anything. That's
The
why
whole issue is what is.
But isn't that what the Democrats are doing? They're out there saying, well, this is the end of our democracy, and we're not sure we can trust this election, and blah, blah, blah. And
Right.
it's like, we haven't even had it
all
yet.
of them
Haven't
are
had
on
it
record, dozens of times over the last 20 years,
Oh, yeah.
questioning every fucking election.
Yeah.
Okay. So that goes back to my whole point about deniers. The other group that's not sacred is there's climate deniers. Those of us that question
Hang on a
the
second
science.
here.
I don't question climate. Climate happens. What I question in it because when you can show me ice cores from 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 years ago with raised temperatures, and theoretically man wasn't here the way it is now, then it's not man that's causing it. Man may be an effect. I'm not saying we don't put any effect into it. And sure, as good custodians to the country or the planet, we should do everything we can to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can't lay all of that on man and say that this is the cause of man. Well, then the solution is everybody euthanizes themselves and we take man out of the equation. And how's that going to work for you?
Well, see, and that you're exactly right. And the big problem there is that you've got the election deniers, you've got the climate deniers that we just talked about, and then you have the science deniers, right? And anybody who's questioning anything that is being used in the narrative that you're questioning has got a denier group to it.
But they only follow the science for as long as they want to follow the science. Well, they follow the science for the vaccine. They follow the science for the climate. Theoretically, it's bad science, the stuff I've seen.
Sorry about
and then they turn around and say, well, there's not just 2 genders. You can't just say there's only 2 genders. Well, isn't that denying science?
Well, then this is... to me, the problem is at the beginning of that. And that is when you say follow the science, 2 things come to my mind. One, I follow the scientific method, which is constantly challenging, coming up with, challenging. It's science, actually. Its intent, it's designed to disprove things, not prove things.
Right.
So when you have a hypothesis that you then want to put into a theory that you then want to go test to prove or disprove said theory, you're using a method to do that. And that method is design, create, rinse, repeat. And you iterate all the time in science. Science is never, that's another one that used to drive me nuts.
I need to answer, Chuck here. Chuck, you're correct. That's 2 different questions. Is Biden president, and was he elected? Yes, he was elected. Is he president? Well, he's
that's
got
a good
the name,
question.
but the question is, who's actually running the country?
Yeah, if you think
He's
the
got
president?
the title, but who's actually doing the job?
if you think old Slow Joe is doing this on, he's the one that's the guiding light at the meetings. I'm sorry, if you think that, then okay, that's your choice. But to anybody that's using any kind of critical thinking or rational thought, look at it and go, okay, well, I've seen that in movies. In fact, Saturday Night Live did a cold open this last week that was funny as hell. And it's like, wait a minute, they come out and just lambasted Joe. So you're seeing that narrative change. And going back to that point that I was making earlier, and then I'll shut up, was I think there's another energy afoot. I think that it has something to do with the cosmological energies, alignments. I think it's quite interesting that there appears to be a red wave that's going to happen on a blood red moon with a full lunar eclipse that won't happen again for another couple of 100 years. And you kind of go, well, Jeff Harmon and his the knowledge that he's able to apply to reading those Vedic charts is just stunned me for the 10 years I've known him.
And the fact that they use red to designate the right side anyways, and it's just another layer of red on that. So
that's right.
The maps will be turning red.
Very interesting. Yeah. It's coincidence, we ask?
That's what I postulated. It was like, that seems kind of interesting. But there's a couple of things that Jeff Harmon did on his recent podcast. Back, I think I'd mentioned in the chat room, in 1860, just before the Civil War, we had this same astronomical alignment. The only difference is this time we've got it's a Pluto conjunction, if I've got it right. And Pluto got this historical characteristic of being a major changer, something that comes in, especially when Jupiter is in the position it's in. So I might not have all of that correct, but there's a significant alignment between them that's happening right now. And the same energy was happening in 1860. And with all the talk about, people, we're going to have a civil war, there's going to be blood in the streets, these guys on the right, they're going to, take your babies and they're going to do this. And
Yep.
And then the guys on the right are saying, you want more of that? You sure you want some more of what you just got for 2 years? And when you look at, and I mentioned this the other night, when you look at the way that the people are speaking, the simple language and the persuasion, and you look at the people from that perspective on each side, it's almost hands down the guys on the right in the red are much more effective at speaking, much more clear thinking, and much more persuasive than the guys on the blue team. And the blue team seems to have this constant dour, future that, especially if these other guys get in. And you go, well, wait a minute, we just went through 4 years of those guys. Wasn't that bad. Okay, in fact, it was really good in a lot of fronts. So what are you basing this on? What question did you use to get to that answer?
There it is. Chuck Thurston says, well, to get real, Biden is too damn old and his age is not his friend. But I don't see Trump or anyone like him being our way forward. I think that's when you get into the personalities too much. Yeah. Trump, would he make a better president than Biden? I think so. Yeah, I happen to believe he's got better ideas than Biden has, without making any jokes. But do I think that there could be somebody, I don't mean to sound ageist, younger? Somebody, sure. It seems like everybody we're voting for these days. What's that, Dave?
I said I have younger people in mind that I would vote for.
Same here.
Well, just look at the bench on both sides. Mm-hmm. I mean, that includes not only the people that are on the field, but the people that are sitting behind them, or that aren't currently running. There's a significant difference in the narrative, the way the speaking, the persuasion. in the message, in the presentation. There's a big difference. I mean, and it's not hard to see. You don't have to look at it from any partisan or, particular ideology. You just say, okay, I look at content all day long, and I'm always gauging who I'm listening to, what does it look like, what's the environment, all that stuff. And I try to determine what's my resonance. Does this person, or does this message, does this information seem credible, or at least pique my curiosity enough to go find out more.
Right.
But when it's just blatant in your face and you go, wait a minute, okay, hold on, wait a minute. I don't have time to consume that right now. I'm going to go find something else.
Right.
And then when
Sarah's here, by the way, too.
There she is.
Said she has a terrible headache in the chat room. How you doing, Sarah?
Sorry about that, Sarah. My bad.
Are you there, Sarah? It says your mic is muted.
Oh, how's that?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Hey, your mic's muted.
Ooh.
Boy, that must be contagious.
Yeah, I have a headache after listening.
I'm sorry.
But I mean, I don't even know which one to address first. So I mean, I guess the easiest thing will be the astrological issue, which, it's everybody talks about cosmic alignment and cosmic rays. So for all we know, everybody's going to become like the Fantastic Four and get superpowers on tomorrow. So
right.
That's what those movies have been prepping us for.
If I could get that and the Powerball, then I would be set. I could be Tony Stark.
Powerball. You can't win the Powerball because I'm going to win it. So.
Well, I'll buy you a house if I win it. What are you going to do?
I'll buy you a truck.
I mean, I don't think it's tax free. So 30%.
No, you get.
You would get. I think they said right now, if you won the 1.9 billion, that you would get after taxes, you would get 973 million, something like that. Is what?
So if nobody gets it tomorrow, and
I could live on that.
Wednesday,
now it's 37%. It's 30% after 150,000 or a little around that. It's 37% on the extra.
Yeah, there you go. And it's like, if you take the cash payout, you'd end up with over 900 million.
Right.
I think I could live on that. I could make do on 900 million.
It'd be
you
tight.
could all be my servants.
It'd be tight, but I'd be able to stay in art for a few more years.
Yeah.
But I mean, and going back to the issue that we've had for the past couple elections about, election deniers and all this stuff, the only way to fix it, to fix the problem, because right now, at least for federal elections, it's all managed by the states, and each state does everything differently. So unless they put everything on one system, which the transparency so everybody can be satisfied with that, we're going to continue to have this, issue of saying, is there gerrymandering going on? Is there, they're not doing
which there always is.
Votes.
Always gerrymandering. Yeah, it's really precluded. I think a bigger win than the red could have tomorrow, by historical standards.
Right, because even then on the federal level, when they try to even the playing field, it doesn't work, because like here in Virginia, over the next 5-6 years, they keep raising minimum wage. So I think the next hike is going to be $13.50. It's $12. I think it's $12 now. $13.50 coming up. $15 within 5 years. If you go on the other side of the country to like California, that's still considered a non-livable wage. As far as distribution of material. So whatever works from one side of the country is not working for the other side. And of course, people are going to fight for you would like to think that they would fight for their constituents or whatever, whatever forces that are backing these electors and stuff of what they're going to do. Because so if you have a big billionaire backing up, throwing money to certain parties, and you always have the lobbies in Congress, the big pharma, big oil, we're not going to get anything done because of those influences. So, but I mean, I mean, the system needs to be, I would say, rehauled, basically, because I mean, from the rhetoric that you see from both sides, and not just the Democrats and the Republicans, it's like they are putting party before their constituents. I mean, every single person in those rooms, they're supposed to take an oath to represent their people, and they don't.
Yes.
They don't. I mean, at this point, because
that goes to what I was saying on Sunday. The ideal situation would be a system where, when there's something on the floor, abortion or whatever, some meaningful piece of legislation, immigration, what have you, that the residents of the state could go on to a system that would allow them to only vote once and vote yes or no on it, so that their representatives could know how their constituents felt about the issue. Their vote isn't going to pass the bill. The senator or congressman is still going to have to do their job and go in and vote on the legislation and stuff.
It's a referendum.
But what it would give you is we would be able to look back at election in time and say, okay, there were 27 bills that came up. We voted this direction on those 27. You voted the other direction. You voted against what we sent you there to do. We sent you to represent us. You're not doing that. You're representing some special interest group or some other thing. And so we're not going to send you back. We're going to vote somebody else in there that will do what we want them to do.
Right. I mean, I do believe, at least on major issues like abortion, there should be at least a referendum. Or, I mean, it's not like you're going to overhaul the Constitution and just go for a direct democracy,
Right.
Eliminate, state lines.
But there's a process for that. We could do that.
We could do, the process is there. You know why the process exists? Because we have democracy. You can have a constitutional convention and change the Constitution, but the founders made it extremely difficult, not impossible, just a difficult process.
Well, because they don't want you to do it every other year because you're
That's
pissed.
right. They don't want it done on a whim, or a whimsy, or by the seat of somebody's pants. You got to have a certain process.
They're not innocent either. I mean, they had their own interest at that point in time.
Oh, sure they did.
I mean, it's like, the 3/5.
But not 21st century issues.
Right.
They had their own issues.
I mean, you're supposed to consider the Constitution as a living document. It grows. It evolves.
Well, and they just come away from a tyrannical king. So they were really fearful that they would elect somebody that would be a tyrant. And so they put all kinds of things in place to stop that.
Right.
Well, to prevent it from happening, but they also put in a mechanism with which for it to function and to continue to go forward. That's why there are amendments, right?
Exactly. So that it can grow, a living, breathing document.
And they put in a process with which to create and add to that document. That is the living part of our system as far as constitutionally. But one of the turning points, in my opinion, of the way and it goes back to the rant I was going on about science, about how this one guy created this whole bifurcation of the way that everybody thought about and experienced reality and gave it to science and created the modern science we have today. We have the same thing with the political system. And one of the escape hatch, handbrake, whatever, that was about to be into the amendments that would have, in my opinion, completely changed, at least for the most part, the trajectory and to where we are today and what we're experiencing is known as the 13th Amendment. Okay.
Yes.
The 13th Amendment was penned by, I think it was Jefferson.
I did a show on
Adams.
I did a show on this.
And it was to preclude anybody that's in law that has a legal capability from ever being in any office, because they knew that these guys, even back then, they were paid by the word, and depending on the language, but they knew that these guys would get in and they would create this legal system around the Constitution to where they could weasel in and out of it. And that's exactly what we have today. That's one of the reasons that we have the mess that we do, is because if you look at the, I think it's 70 or 80% of the members of Congress all are lawyers or have a legal background.
Yeah.
So they're, when they create these 1,000-page bills to cover something, and they call it, I got to tell you, I'm sure you guys saw this, but one of the most absurd and bizarre examples of cognitive dissonance in the ideological spectrum of the left was it was a TV show. It was somebody on CNN, I think, some black woman, and she got on and she went on this rant about how the word inflation was something that was invented and perpetrated by the
Republicans now,
and to put into the coffee and the kitchen table dialogue, but which it never existed before.
That's
or
funny.
It just wasn't a part of the lexicon.
I thought I knew all about inflation when Carter was in office.
And
yeah,
so
I think she hangs around with too many millennials.
Well, you watch that, and then it took somebody, I don't know, 10 seconds to post up there. Do you know what you want to know what the definition is? It's called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Duh.
Okay.
So the Republicans introduced inflation into the lexicon, she said. It didn't exist in the lexicon of the common people. But but then the Democrats had the Inflation Reduction Act.
But that's
come
just
from?
an
What's that
example
mean?
Here's this personality that's talking to several tens or thousands of people, telling them that this is what's going on, that this word has been hijacked and tossed at. And you sit there and you go, God, I can't take that much more of this when it's that blatant. And it goes back to the point I was making about what I think is going to cause the change we're about to see is going to be driven more so than people realize from a virus and vax fatigue. There's this thing caused, and it reaches out beyond those two words. It's what it affected. And I think that people are just sitting there going, I can't do this. Whatever this is, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something different. The way our political system is fucked up is we've got all these, the reason that a divided government, if the Republicans, the right side takes both the House and Senate, which I think they will, then there's nothing Biden will be able to do at all. One of the things about a divided government, the common meme is that it slows everything down to a crawl. Well, yeah, and some of that stuff you're going to slow to a crawl, you don't want to happen. So part of having a divided government is to keep bad shit from happening.
Yeah.
Right? And at least there is some balance between, and this is, let me toss this out on the table and get your guys' opinion. If this actually happens, if this red wave actually happens, Republicans have got the majorities in both. What do you think Biden is going to say after the election is certified? He's been a complete, the Republicans took everything. And hell, they took even more than we thought. We didn't see that coming.
He's going to immediately go back to his campaign stance of, we've got to be bipartisan, we've got to work together, and we've got to find ways to work together, and so on and so on.
You think?
So on.
Yeah.
I think that's the only choice he's going to be forced to take, because frankly, I don't think he's going to be able to do anything himself. It's the people who handle him are going to do that. So,
and that's what I find fascinating as I think about that, because if that actually happens, and Biden is obviously still the president, I mean, he's basically going to be out on the front of the bow of the ship all by himself
for the next 2 years.
And the people behind him, they're the ones that are going to animate him and give whatever words and things and actions.
I actually don't believe even the Democrats will want to keep him in office. I don't think that's going to happen. I think
I don't think
there's
will
going
either.
to be something.
It's going to be somebody else.
Something dramatic will change.
Do you think that will come from within the Democratic Party or through the political process?
I think the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party doesn't want to keep Biden in office.
Here's what I still think they're going to do this. I think they're going to. He's going to right away throw Kamala under the bus and say this thing was all because of the border and that was your job. I gave you it. You didn't do it. I want your resignation. Get rid of her. Then they can bring somebody in, and I say they, the ones that are controlling things behind the thing, can bring somebody in that is not going to be a complete cock up for taking over. And then he will retire on a medical. And whoever they bring in will be made president for the last 2 years. They're going to bring somebody in that has the ability to do the last 2 years and run for re-election that has a decent chance of winning. So look at that bench. Now, before I was thinking they'd bring Nancy in because then she could at least call herself Madam Vice President for the rest of her life. But I don't think they'll bring her because she doesn't have a chance to win re-election. So,
well, the thing is that when this would happen, she would already be out of her seat.
I know, which would make her open and available.
It make her open and available, but they're not going to throw Nancy in there.
Do you think they'd throw Hillary in?
No.
I'm just saying because she's been sniffing around.
Well, it has to be if the succession is president, vice president, speaker of the House, and then I forgot the title of the fourth one.
Pro tempore.
Yeah, the pro temp. So that right now, from what if the Republicans have both houses or both chambers,
they won't. They won't pick. They won't like that.
They have to approve that.
Right, but it wouldn't be the first time. Look at Spiro Agnew leaving for Gerald Ford. It's not the first time we've gotten rid of a vice president while somebody's in office. Even while somebody was, Dick was already under investigation when they had Spiro step down.
So that's the question. Do you think Joe will go before Kamala or vice versa?
No, I think they'll get rid of Kamala because they don't want her to be president. Okay. Even they understand that that's just a huge, giant mistake. So
it's not like a fear that she'll be really good and implement something that's just against the right policies. It's the fact that she'd be horrid.
She would be horrid. Yeah. So they will throw her under the bus and get rid of her first. That'll be the first step. They'll blame all of this election loss on her not doing her job to take care of the border. That's what they put her in charge of. And she didn't do her damn job. That's how they're going to phrase it. And they'll get rid of her. They'll force her to resign or he will straight out fire her.
Yeah.
Then he can put anybody he wants in there. The question is, who are they going to stick in there? Because that person will have to have that ability to be likable enough to be reelected.
But let's also make one thing clear. Joe Biden isn't going to put her out to pasture and retire her or resign her. That's not going to be his call. He's going to do what he is told to do.
Right. It's all
which has been the pattern of this whole president.
I think he's going to write it out. I mean, it's 2 years, to go.
They might try to make him.
Do you think he'll actually last that long physically and from a health perspective, Sarah?
I'm surprised.
Chuck, there's no constitutional process for where we're going. What, the 25th Amendment? Are you talking about? I think everything we've mentioned constitutionally supported.
He could straight out, because was it McKinley? One of the others retired because of health reasons. Trying to think who it was. Can't think who it was. But he could say, because of my health, I can't continue on. I'm gonna resign and turn the thing over to the vice president. But he's not going to do that while Kamala's in there, so they're going to have to get rid of her.
Yeah.
The question is,
they don't want to retire him out by the 25th Amendment right now. Even the Democrats know he needs to go. They're not going to do that because they know then they've got the Kamala problem.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. She would be gone. She would be gone by the time they do that.
Well, I think the chances of
because I think they will dump her as soon as this election is over. They will blame it all on her, make her the scapegoat, throw her under the bus, get rid of her, and replace her. The question is, who do they replace her with?
Yeah.
They'll probably want somebody with the economic acumen,
Yeah.
I don't know.
The whole
I
inflation
think that
issue. Because that's going to be the main thing. That's why they lost it. I mean, I think at least it's hitting all the home things. I mean, things like climate change and global and foreign policy and all that. That's kind of in the distance. But when you have something that is affecting you directly, I mean, when you go to the store and everything's like $2-3 more, gas, so you're paying $60 at least to fill a tank. That's going to definitely have an effect. That's going to affect every American. And that with the way Biden really screwed up was giving those payouts, those stimulus payouts, because even in our area and all over the country, there are no workers. People would rather sit at home with the payout, and then after that, then they take unemployment, so they're out at least for another 6 to 8 months or however much they're doing. So, and, even as business owners, we're frustrated, we're frustrated that we can't find people to work. And, if you want to get America back on its feet, we have to put people to work. I mean, we have to be doing things. Otherwise,
even Roosevelt changed out his VPs.
Yeah. Chuck, you asked Gone how they would call for a resignation. She would be forced to resign.
Not the first vice president we've done that to.
Yeah, not the first. And and can they force her to resign internally? Yeah. If they want her off to step down, she'll step down.
Or she'll be kicking and screaming. I mean, throughout the next 2 years.
He can straight out fire her. She works for him.
She does.
Right.
She's there by his pleasure. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where she's been, even during this whole.
She is elected. She was on the ballot.
She is on the ballot, but you don't actually vote for her. You vote for the president, and he brings the VP along with him.
Yeah.
Now, back in the old days, prior to that, the VP was whoever he was running against that didn't get enough votes. So in this case, it would have been Trump. So it would have been the two of them together in office.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
And for decades, the VP office was considered the end of your political career. You were asked to be VP. You were officially dead as a politician. You were done. Yeah. Roosevelt changed that.
Right.
So anyway, we're at the end of the show. So we're going to wrap this up for tonight, for a Monday night. Let's just say this to everybody out there.
Get out and vote.
I encourage you all to vote.
I already
Chuck
voted.
has already voted, so Chuck doesn't have to worry about it tomorrow. What was that, Sarah?
So I already voted, and I still have, I mean, even not just this administration and the one before and the one before that, I have voter fatigue on top of the COVID fatigue.
Sure. Rainey and I are going to head out tomorrow morning and vote. And of course, we're in a small town. It's 6 blocks from here, and it's cold, so we'll drive. But I encourage everybody to go vote at your local poll and get it done. And don't not vote because you think it's already been decided.
It hasn't. Get out there and vote. Every vote counts.
Every vote counts.
More so now than ever.
It'll be nice to get back together after it gets settled down and decided, and have a chat about what actually happened, as opposed to what we.
Let's not forget, we've got poker chips on this.
That's right.
All right, Professor Bauer, thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll talk to you more than likely tomorrow night.
Well, if you keep letting me back in,
And, you've got a key to the back door, so
it's like feeding a cat.
So there it is.
Shows up.
Chuck Thurston says it's voted, it's counted, I'm good. Boom. He's done. He's just going to sit back and spectate tomorrow.
Wouldn't it be nice if just like you have your bank account or anything on your phone, email, text.
Yeah.
That you could go and vote, and then you have your confirmation.
Yeah,
Like American Idol.
you can't vote again. You can't
Right.
cheat. There,
if they can do this shit like Sarah said on American Idol, why can't we do it in the voting system?
And if
Yeah.
they can do this and take that up a notch, if you can do online banking and not fuck the bank over
Exactly.
and
The
end up with
security
more
is
money
there.
in your account, you
Well,
can vote
and for
by-
that matter, if you vote early and then you find out your candidate was screwing around on his wife or something that's offended you and you want to change your vote, you could go in and change it.
And this last week, Netanyahu got back in.
Yeah,
in,
I saw
Yeah.
Israel, right? I mean, all
I
that
thought that
stuff
was
is
great.
crazy. But that was their 5th prime minister in 4 years.
I know.
They got
I know.
They're
racing with England. England
yeah,
like, that's good. We can get another one.
why don't we have a no confidence vote in our system?
we should have.
Right? Make
We
that
should
an
have a no
amendment.
confidence vote.
And bring that 13th back and throw all those damn lawyers out.
Yeah.
So
Shakespeare had it right.
yeah,
It will be all liberal arts degrees.
there it is. All right, let's everybody stop talking or we'll keep going.
all be painters.
So-
That's what we should be. That's it.
Professor, we'll see you
All right.
probably tomorrow night. Have
All
a
right.
good day tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody. Peace.
See you later. And Sarah, good to have you. You said you voted already too?
Yeah.
Then you
Yeah, I
can
went
just
ahead
sit
and
back
voted.
and watch
She
tomorrow.
live in Virginia. They do that sort of thing.
Virginia. So, you have a
yeah.
good day tomorrow watching how the vote rolls in. May everything,
Go have some
Go well
chamomile
tomorrow.
tea. Take care of your headache.
yes.
Yeah.
Chuck
No, but
had
I
a
mean,
good
we
remedy
won't know by
earlier.
showtime. I don't think we'll know, right? I mean, at least for the
We
big one.
should know by showtime, but we probably
No, I
won't.
don't think so. I mean, because they'll probably have.
I don't
runoffs,
think there's
right?
any reason we shouldn't
Georgia
know by
definitely. They'll
tomorrow
probably
night
have a runoff.
what's going on.
So,
Well, we'll see which
We'll
direction.
have a pretty
it's
good
headed.
idea, I think, of where things are heading.
yeah.
So, shots for everyone, says Chuck.
Yay.
I vote for Chuck.
I'll take 2.
Vote for Chuck.
All right, Sarah, you have a good night.
All right.
Uncle Dave, same thing, brother.
All
Have a
right.
good
Take
night.
it easy.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, I'm sure.
Yep.
All right, folks. It just leaves me, you and me. So let's get out of here. Have a good night. And go out and vote tomorrow. If you have not voted already, go out and vote. I'm going to go vote tomorrow with my wife. We're going to go probably before 10 a.m. tomorrow. We'll go off and cast our votes. And may the best possible decision come to fruition tomorrow in all the elections happening across the nation. Let's see where we go from here. All right. So you all have a good night. I appreciate the fact that you're here and that you continue to come here. And I will see you soon. So you all have a good night. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.